In the near term, making the procedure itself efficient and short is important. In the long run, we're of course very interested in the possibility that robotics will enable remote operation in some way, shape, or form. I think that's beginning to look like something that isn't just science fiction, but something that may come to pass in the next 10 or 15 years.
Welcome, MedTech Gurus. Today, as I mentioned in the introduction, we're joined by an extraordinary guest, Dr. Adam S. Arthur, the Chief Medical Officer for Medtronic's neurovascular business. Dr. Arthur brings more than 2 decades of experience as a practicing neurosurgeon and a renowned leader in stroke care and neurovascular innovation. Prior to joining Medtronic, he served as the chair of neurosurgery at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, where he led pioneering research and clinical trials that had helped redefine the standard of care for stroke patients worldwide. A respected voice in both clinical and industry circles, Dr. Arthur spent his career advancing the science of neurovascular medicine through collaboration, evidence generation, and technology innovation, all with the goal of improving patient outcomes. At Medtronic, he now leads efforts to translate clinical insight into breakthrough solutions that expand access to life-saving care and shape the future of neurovascular treatment. Hey, Adam, are you ready to be our guru today?
All in, let's go.
Yeah, I love it. We're excited to have you. So let's start with something fun or interesting about yourself or your family so we can get to know you a little better.
Sure. I have a wonderful wife, 3 children, 2 dogs, and 2 cats, and I live in Memphis, Tennessee. My oldest loves lacrosse, and then I have 14-year-old twins. My daughter's very into theater, and her brother is a huge soccer player and plays center defender at a high level as a 14-year-old.
Oh, wow. That sounds like an incredibly busy household and maybe even some travel around the area.
There might be some.
Yeah, I hear you. So, Adam, you've had an incredible career as a neurosurgeon, an educator, and now as a chief medical officer. So help us out. What inspired you to make the transition from the operating room to industry leadership at Medtronic?
Quite simply, the prospect of being able to better help more people.
Mm-hmm.
I love surgery. I love medicine. I love the intimacy of going in and really being able to affect a change in the circulation of somebody's brain and help them to live their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've gotten older, the chance to do that at scale is a tempting siren song. And I believe that in medical technology, there is the potential to really help people at scale. And I don't think there's a company better positioned to do that than Medtronic.
Yeah, for sure. And, that scale's got to be intriguing, right? So you can have such a big and broad impact, right, with some of those life lessons. And I would also think some of the input you can get from other clinicians as you go along the way. Am I heading down the right track with that?
Yeah, sure. Neurosurgery is very much a team sport. Mm-hmm. And I love neurosurgeons. And so connecting more medical expertise into medical technology development is something that I think I can do and hopefully reap some benefits from that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, as I did my research and I mentioned in the introduction, you've led some major clinical trials in stroke and neurovascular innovation. So I'm kind of curious, what have been some of the more important lessons from that experience that you now bring into your new role? Can you provide us some insights there?
Yeah, I think clinical evidence generation is very difficult, and the devil is in the details. There are disparate practices, different customs, different ways of talking to patients and their families and steering them or helping them to realize what they want. But in the end, when you bring all that together and you're able to introduce a new therapy or prove a new therapy, it's sort of addictive. Fresh on my mind is carotid disease and carotid stenting, because this week we got the results of the CREST-2 trial for which I was an investigator, and it's exciting to see us lowering the risks of strokes and other major adverse events for patients with carotid occlusive disease. It's exciting to see stenting do better than best medical management. I wasn't sure it would because best medical management has gotten a lot better. And I'll tell you that within that trial, best medical management is a high bar. But stenting arm did better, and that tells us something, and that means that new devices in the carotid stenting space, like the Contigo stent, which is something Medtronic's been working with, have the potential to help a lot of patients.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if I might, I'm going to just peel into the devils in the details a bit for just a moment. I've heard in previous podcasts, it's some of that study setup and study design, right, to get that outcome at the end. Is that what you're seeing, is getting those studies laid out exactly right so you can navigate through that process?
Well, getting studies set up exactly right so that they call an important clinical question. I've participated in studies that were negative that still taught us a lot. This last year, we published the results of a study on minimally invasive ICH evacuation where the intervention failed to achieve the primary benefit, but I still think we learned from it. And I still think that patients with intracranial hemorrhage represent a population that we need to do more to help. And that, improvements in technique and in technology might help us to be able to do that.
Yeah, I love that. That feedback led you down to maybe a different pathway, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I love that. So the Medtronic neurovascular business is known for advancing the treatment of ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke. So from your perspective, what do you see as the next frontier in stroke care?
Well, at the present moment, we have published in the last year in the New England Journal of Medicine the results of the Embolize trial, which shows that a disease that was previously thought not to be amenable to a minimally invasive or endovascular approach is, in fact, and that's chronic subdural, a disease that affects mostly older Americans. We've been drilling holes in the skull for at least 7,000 years based on radiocarbon dating, much the same cranial openings that I've done with my residents here in the last week or two. But it turns out that a better understanding of that disease that we've achieved just in the last 10 years has enabled us to prove that the injection of Onyx into the microvasculature of the dura stops leaky blood vessels from continuing to leak fluid, which really helps those patients. So that represents the spreading of endovascular technology and techniques. In this case, Onyx, a therapy that's been around in the United States for 20, 25 years, into a new disease. And so I really think it's a moment to draw a breath and realize, hey, we really are finding new ways to meet unmet clinical needs. And I think it's beginning to, it's maybe the camel nose under the tent of going beyond a straightforward ischemic or hemorrhagic stroke. I mean, chronic subdural does start, we think, with hemorrhage into the space between the outside of the brain and the inside of the skull, but it's a little bit removed from just a blocked blood vessel or a blood vessel bleeding inside the brain. And I think that points the way towards a future where we'll use arteries and veins as the highways and sewers to sneak into very high-priced real estate and do things for people that make a difference to their brain health. And so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And if I followed this correctly, is it really, if you will, repurposing or finding a newer application for an older technology?
Yeah, I think that's true. But I think there are newer technologies on the way as well.
Yeah, it's kind of learning from what we've done in the past, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. And looking at this, looking at Medtronic, right? Your neuro science platform is vast and very comprehensive. So, with a focus on delivering meaningful innovation, how do you see your team continuing to bridge the gap between research, device innovation, and real world outcomes? How do you keep everybody focused and moving in that direction?
Well, luckily, I'm not the only one trying to keep everyone focused and moving in that direction. And it's a big team. As you know, Medtronic is a very large company with a big footprint in both cardiac and neurosciences. I think it takes a lot of discipline to continue to make sure that clinical evidence, research and development on the medical technology itself are always driving to produce better clinical outcomes. But when we can provide technology that makes a big difference for patients and their families, that's really magical. And we've got a track record of doing that in the neurosciences, in particular in Medtronic, for many years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be very gratifying as well. And, Adam, a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs or soon to be entrepreneurs. And I'm wondering if you can help us out, right? Because collaboration between physicians and industry is really critical to innovation. And I'm wondering if you could help us out with your philosophy on building these relationships, making sure they're effective, and ensuring that clinicians have a strong voice in product development. Can you provide us some insights there?
You're asking tough questions. Being a physician right now isn't very easy. There's a lot of demands on physicians' times. So while a lot of physicians would like to participate in innovating, they struggle to find both the hours necessary and the opportunities to do so. So I think collaborating with physicians means trying to find a way to use time efficiently, and to make sure that there's clear communication about what the startup needs and what that physician can provide. I think when that happens, it can be really wonderful. And I've thoroughly enjoyed my collaboration with startups over the years. But there have been also times where it's been hard, where there have been misunderstandings, or when, frankly, I've had to say, "Hey, this isn't working." We've been trying and we're not advancing towards the goal. So I think a certain degree of honesty in first expressing what it is you need, what it is that you expect, and then assessing along the way, are we really making progress in the way that we hope to? Are we going to be able to do what we want to do together? Because not every effort will be successful, as you know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that honesty and communication must be really critical to this process, right? Because you probably, or physicians like you, surgeons like you, must get hundreds of inquiries a year. So trying to sort through that and getting that honest evaluation of what might be successful, I think, would be critical here.
Yeah, that's where the concept of failing fast, I think, becomes very important, right? When we talk about being honest and that communication, then what we're really talking about is saying, "Hey, this isn't a good fit," or "This doesn't work," and failing fast is so much better in the long run in all business endeavors.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, sometimes that failing fast can lead you to a better pathway, right, where you can pick up and learn something from that failure, right?
Yeah, there's an example of that in Medtronic Neurovascular, maybe not failing really fast, but flow diversion is an incredibly important therapy. And as we've made flow diversion easier and easier, right, and focused on making it easier to deploy these complex woven stents across the neck of an aneurysm, we've found that the effort to make it easier has resulted perhaps in flow diverters that can be deformed. So my colleague Bill Patterson and the teams he lead at Research and Development have found that there are ways that we can fix that. And as you might know, we've had to recall the pipeline Vantage, but we're going to come out with much better pipeline and flow diverters, and I'm excited about that. Being honest about where we've got things that aren't working exactly the way we want is the only way to make progress and to improve what we can offer for physicians and their patients and the patients' families. And we're doing that with pipeline right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And building on the discussion for our entrepreneurs out there, you've led both large academic programs and now global medtech here at Medtronic. So I'm just kind of curious, how do you continue this to foster this curiosity and this culture of innovation in a big organization? Do you have any advice for our gurus out there?
Everyone's got different personal styles in terms of, how they do things. I think for me, it's about being very honest, admitting when I don't know things, trying to find common ground. I already said I love neurosurgeons. I love my patients too. And so to some extent, when we're focused on providing neurointerventionalists, neuroendovasculars, not just neurosurgeons, but neurologists, radiologists, others with better tools, that mission and our shared sense of the importance of that mission will overcome a lot a lot of problems as long as we're awkwardly honest about where the problems are and what we need to do to move past them.
Yeah, I love that. I think the takeaway, I love that shared mission, and then perhaps checking the ego at the door, right?
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Adam, doing my research and in my years in this business, I've come to understand that stroke care is incredibly time sensitive. And I'm wondering, what role you see some of the emerging technologies out here, such as AI. We hear a lot about that, robotics, real-time imaging. What role do you see all this playing in improving speed and precision in neurovascular interventions? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
Sure. In the near term, making the procedure itself efficient and short is important. One of my current fellows, Ali Alawa, just published a study that showed that the time it takes to do the thrombectomy may be more important than the time it takes to get the patient to the hospital. And so that provides an opportunity for us at Medtronic to develop ways to make the thrombectomy procedure faster and more efficient and more effective. In the long run, we're of course very interested in the possibility that robotics will enable remote operation in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's beginning to look like something that isn't just science fiction, but something that may come to pass, in the next 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, that's terrific. So, yeah, well, let's just focus mainly on the funding part of this, right? You get a lot of clinical research is expensive. So, in terms of getting something to the market for our gurus out there, how do you package that so you can get the funding that you need to bring something to market?
So Medtronic obviously has a lot of different directions we can go in and limited capital. So we're constantly trying to figure out what the most efficient way to use our resources are. For a startup, for a mid-tech guru in a startup, obviously providing potential investors with a good view of exactly what you're going to do with the funding, what the resources will provide, how you're going to leverage what you have, and why that's unique and protectable are all sort of important aspects of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the protectable, I think, is a big part of it too, right? To be able to align the intellectual property and make sure you've got the resources to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Adam, as you take on this role now at Medtronic, what do you see are your top priorities for the next year or so, and maybe how will you define success in those priorities?
Well, this is a role that didn't exist before. It was created, and so I'm wary that I have a lot to learn, and I need to find out more about the organization, the teams, and how I can help. So, priority number one is learning. Priority number one is responding to the leaders and the associates in Medtronic in terms of what their needs are and how I can meet those needs. So I need to be a better listener. I need to carefully take advantage of this whole new world open up in front of me. I'd say priority number two would be to continue to develop some of our existing therapies. I mentioned pipeline, which is an incredibly powerful and an important tool for treating aneurysms. I mentioned thrombectomy. And obviously carotid stenting, fresh in our minds this week. And then Onyx for chronic subdural. So you were the one who said that was repurposing an old tool for new uses. I mean, I think that's something I have to do as I take in this role is our existing book of business, making sure that we're providing clinical evidence and support to use the tools that we have to their best ability. And then the third priority would be developing new tools. One of our collaborators, Alex Kalesi, just reported on a project called EOS at the Congress of Neurological Surgeons. And this is a way of using closed loop sensing on the vagus nerve to help stroke patients potentially recover from a stroke. So it marries two important medical technology areas in the neuroscience. One is endovascular approaches, and then the other is stimulation and closed loop stimulation. So I think that's an exciting and brand new way of maybe helping patients.
Yeah, I love that. I've had a couple of gurus on previously, and it's interesting. You look at the timing of some things, right? Where some products or technologies have been sitting on the shelf, right, and maybe are too early stage. It'll be interesting to find out as you're listening if you've got any opportunities to find new applications or some of those products sitting there that you can now create an outcome for or an application for.
Yeah, I mean, Onyx and chronic subdural, that's definitely the case. Onyx has been approved in the United States for the preoperative embolization of brain AVMs for 20 years.
Mhm.
Physicians have used it off-label for a lot of other things, but we are on the cusp of potentially having clearance to market it for treating chronic subdural with great clinical evidence to support that, and that's exciting.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it sounds like this is really an exciting time for you and your team at Medtronic. You've touched on it a little bit, but what do you see the future holding? Where do you see things in the next 5 or 10 years?
I see us really growing and expanding. I see new devices, new uses of old devices, and unmet clinical needs that we find new ways to meet. We're living longer, but I think in the neurosciences in particular, we want to make sure that those longer lives are quality time where people preserve their capabilities to do all the things that are important for them. And that's one of the things I've always loved about neurosurgery. I mean, in a non-judgmental way, your patients might be smart or stupid, old or young, whatever end of whatever spectrum, but you want to help them to do what's important for them and live their lives, have their capabilities to help the people they want to help, do the things they want to do. And I love that. You have patients that are race car drivers, teachers, everything in between.
Yeah,
It's a very democratic thing. Disease isn't limited to one economic stratum or one race or one gender, and I love that. That as we develop these technologies, we're helping everybody to do what they want to do.
yeah. I can hear the passion in your voice, and I love that. So, Adam, first of all, I'd like to just take a moment and thank you for the insights and expertise you've provided us. If somebody wants to learn more about you or Medtronic's neurovascular business, how do we connect with you? Are you on LinkedIn? Is there a website? How do we learn more?
Sure. I mean, Medtronic's got a pretty good footprint online, so you're welcome to go to the website and learn about our products, learn about our company. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on social media. I go to many of the neurovascular and neurosurgical meetings and meet all kinds of great people. So there's ample opportunities in our connected medical technology ecosystem to meet, to learn, and to be more involved.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Adam, once again, thank you so much. I appreciated your time and insight as our guru today.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to MedTech Gurus. I am Sylvester Harris, your MC. If you want to learn more about Tom and his consulting services, you can go to www.pctmedical.com or email Tom at tom@pctmedical.com. Now, I can be reached at Sylvester Harris, that's SylvesterHarris 5048 @gmail.com, and I'd be pleased to discuss any voiceover work that you may want for your company or broadcast. Hey, thanks so much for listening, and catch us on the next episode of MedTech Gurus.